Hello and welcome. I am Dogbert here making a very special video that I've been wanting to make for a very long time about, well, my adoption story of how we came to adopt my daughter Gabrielle and followers on my channel. You already know that she was adopted a few months ago. Well, I'm going to talk about the entire process and wait a minute. What's Marvel Strike Force doing here? This isn't a Marvel Strike Force video. Go away, Marvel Strike Force. Shoot! That's better. Well, anyway, so it's a very serious video. You know that I adopted her, well, got placed with her a few months ago, and I've had to wait. Yeah, you know what? Something just feels off. This doesn't feel right. Something's wrong here. This video is a very serious video, and this just doesn't feel right. What do we need? What do we need? Need something else. Can't just be this. You know what? I think I got it. Hang on a second. We're going to restart this video, and then we'll talk about adoption. Hello and welcome. My name is John, but followers of my channel, you know me better as Dogbert. But for today, I decided to come out from behind the dog to talk about a very special topic, and that is adoption. So this is not a Marvel Strike Force video. It's going to be all about adoption, very off topic. So if you find this video, no, I don't normally talk about this. I normally talk about Marvel Strike Force or other games that I happen to be playing at that time. So just keep that in mind if you're looking to like and subscribe, which is always helpful as well. But with all this said, let's go and take a look at adoption in America in 2024. So let's get into this, what to expect when adopting a baby in 2024. I say a baby because if you're adopting an older child, you're going through the state, that is a totally different experience. I know a little bit about it, and it's very different from what I know. But I'm not an expert on this. By no means, I'm not an expert on this as well. I'm just going to be giving you my experience, everything I know and dealt with, and my final thoughts, and even give you the cost. The reason why I'm doing this is because, well, there's not a whole lot out there about this. People don't really talk about the adoption, and there's reasons why we don't talk about adoptions, and you're going to find those out in this video. So let's get into it. So why did we choose to adopt? Well, me and my wife do have a son. He is now 23 years old. By the time the adoption happened, he was 22 still. And what essentially happened is back when he was born via C-section. And due to the complications of the C-section, it actually created what is known as Asherman syndrome in my wife. This is scarring of the uterus tissue and the fallopian tubes. My wife has a very severe case of this, making it impossible for her to become pregnant ever again. We went through many different doctors, and they flat out can't do anything. At least back then, they might have been able to do something in these later years. Like I said, it's been 22 years. We made the decision back when we first looked into the adoption. This was actually just right before COVID hit. We actually made the decision that we were ready to go with the adoption stuff. And then, of course, COVID hit. That slowed us down. Took us a few years to actually get matched and get a baby. But we were able to, and this is why we had to choose to adopt. We did have another choice. There was surrogacy. That's with in vitro. That's even more expensive than adoption, believe it or not. But it's very costly. But that's why we chose to adopt. So now, next is, who are these birth mothers that are giving up these children? Well, the birth mothers can be teenagers, like you see in the movies, but they generally aren't that. These are actually a small minority of the birth mothers. You're most likely to have a birth mother who's in her later 20s into her 30s. The birth mother that we worked with was actually 35 years old. This gives you an idea just how off the movies really are. And there's numerous reasons why. The first one that you're going to have a lot of times come up is religious reasons. The birth mother could be very religious. This can go into the picking as well, and that could be her main choice. Sometimes they just don't want to be a parent. No other way of saying it. They don't feel that they would make good parents. They don't want to be a parent. They don't want responsibility for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. That's what they chose. They might have just started or finished school. This is actually a big one. They might just be starting college. They might decide to go back to college, go back to school. They might have just finished college or school and want to start a career. And that means there's no time for a child, possibly. At least they don't believe. Whatever their belief is, it doesn't matter. This is what they've chosen. And they just don't have the financial means to support a child or an additional child. They could already have other children. This could even be a husband and wife, a married couple. They're having a child and they just can't support it. They don't have the financial means. They want better for their child, so they decide to give it up. So this doesn't always have to be just be a birth mother. The father can be involved as well. Just depends on the situation. And of course, there could be a traumatic event involved. We obviously can think of the first ones right off the top of our head, but the other on some other traumatic events, there could be a death in the family that just they can't deal with the depression and the grief, or don't want to go on. Like I know one of the birth mothers that was potentially looking at us. Unfortunately, the father died of a disease, not COVID, just another disease, and she didn't want to go on being a single parent, and that's why she chose to do this. You know, that's just unfortunate it happens, but it does happen, and that is a reason why they might choose to go this route. And then there's also a less than ideal reason, which I will get into in my final thoughts. This is more sketchy. Don't want to talk about it just yet. We'll get into it later. So what are the steps of adoption that you're going to have to go through? Well, first you're going to have to choose an agency, or you're going to go international adoption, or you're going to go private adoption. I'll explain those three. And then next, you're going to need a home study. No matter which one of those you choose, you're going to need a home study at some point. There's no getting around it. You're going to create profiles about your family and yourself, obviously. That's going to be after the home study. And then you get to wait and hope to be selected. Yep. That's actually a portion of this. Then once you're selected, you get to wait for the birth. And then you take placement of the child. Then you have post-placement visits and meetings along with the lead up to the finalization. Then you have the actual finalization, and then you get the birth certificate and social security number after all that, and you are finally done with the entire adoption process at that point. So, choosing an agency, international, or private adoption. Let's go over these three choices. I'll start out with actually international. And I'll tell you right now, it is a myth that international is cheaper than domestic. Because you will need to conform to the laws of the country you're adopting from, plus all the laws you're going to have to do, all the things you need to do to bring the child back into the America. That's going to be extra costs there. You're going to have to travel to that country and possibly stay there for an extended period of time. How long? Depends on the country. Could be weeks, could be days, could be months. Who knows? Depends on the country, like I said. I did look into this too. And you're going to need to pay government fees in that country. And depending on the country, how corrupt they are, you could be paying bribes to government officials in order to get the child out of that country and allow you to adopt that child. You can see just on this alone how much extra money you're going to be spending, because guess what? You still have to go through the process of making the child a U.S. citizen, plus go through the U.S. citizenship, and then go through the process in U.S. courts of adopting that child as well. So you are not going to be skipping anything. You are not going to be saving anything. I'm not saying don't do it. If you have the means and you want to do this, go ahead. But go into it knowing that you're not going to be saving money. You're going to be spending more. Now, there's also private adoption. This is where you, on your own, go and find a birth mother who wants to choose you to have you adopt the child. This is actually the cheapest way, but it's also got some perils to it. This could be someone you know, could be a family friend, a member, anything. Happens to be pregnant, and you just want to adopt a child. I mean, this happens all the time. It's very risky, though, just posting on the internet or some classified ad saying, hey, we want to adopt a child. You know, if you're pregnant, you want to give up a child for adoption. This is very, very risky because there's no checks and balances here. You can be easily defrauded, and you can look online. There's plenty of stories of people who've been defrauded who didn't do their research, make sure that the things were real, and lost thousands of dollars to these people running scams. Unfortunately, people do take advantage of people who are desperate looking for a child, and people who are trying to save some money because adoption is expensive, as you'll see with my costs. It is cheaper though than going through an agency if you can pull it off, if you happen to know somebody who's legitimate, not going to scam you. So keep that all in mind. Now, the agency, well, you get to search and research the different adoption agencies. You're going to have to they will generally be non-profits. I put that in quotes for a reason because if you're not sure what a non-profit is, I'll go into that. They can be tied to a church or religion, and some of them very much are. They're going to want you to be a specific religion, belong to a certain church, sometimes even to work with them. And I've never seen one that didn't have some sort of application fee, and you have to be essentially approved to join the agency to take you on as a client because they have so many potential parents that already signed up waiting to adopt. So they can be a bit picky on who to accept. Generally, if you want the absolute perfect child from the perfect birth mother who has no issues, good luck. If you're open to taking on a child who is, the birth mother could be addicted to drugs, alcohol, smoking, all that stuff, you're open to, some of those things that could happen with that. You have a much greater chance of being accepted. You probably will be, and it actually will be a little bit cheaper. The other thing is you can choose the gender. There are some agencies that let you choose the gender, of course, for an additional cost. Just be aware if you choose to go that route. There's a lot of birth mothers who won't choose you because of that, even if they do know what the gender of the baby is going to be. So I wouldn't recommend it. It's going to be more costly. You're probably going to have a longer wait, but it does exist. And they don't usually give you upfront costs because honestly, they actually don't know. They'll give you ballparks of what things could cost, but each birth mother, depending on their situation, their pregnancy, how it's going, the costs are going to vary. So this is quite honestly not really so much of a something on them, like trying to hide something. They just don't know, but they don't always want to be upfront on their costs, like how much they're going to charge you, because you're going to pay agency fees, you're going to pay for this, that, and everything else. And the agency we ended up going was actually upfront with it, gave us the breakdown. Here's all our fees and everything. We actually went with two different agencies. The first one didn't work out because we questioned them when they tried to raise the rates. And when we asked simply why the rates were being raised, we questioned it. They flat out got upset at us for questioning them. They felt like, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be questioning them. We should just give them thousands of more of dollars. And that's what ended that relationship, made us find a different agency. So if you look at adoption agencies, like I said, I just talked about that one. If you look at their leadership, expect to find a lawyer leading the company or being close to leading the company, like on their board or something. Sorry, moving my chair around here. You'll need to You need to make a choice between a more local-based agency or a national agency. A local one would be more familiar with your area or state, but of course they're going to have a smaller reach usually because they're only looking in your area or state. National ones, they tend to be more expensive, but they do have that larger reach. And they might have more requirements than what your state actually says you need, because they might be a speed blanket. Here's the most restrictive state, so we're going to go by that. Makes it a lot easier on them of what requirements, rather than trying to tailor it to every state that they have to, then that they're already covered. So generally speaking, I mean, depending on where you live, you know what your risk tolerance is. The nationals could work for you. The local could work for you. We started out with a national. We went more to a local state, but we live in Florida, so we're a pretty big state. So our reach was pretty good, great already. Now, if you do go to a national and you do go across state lines, there's going to be a little bit more cost involved. That's because there is a commission. I can't remember the exact name of the commission you're going to have to go through, but you cannot remove the child from another state to bring it back home until you go through that commission. and get approval to take the child home. This is a government thing, not like an agency thing. And once you go through that, then you can bring the child home back to your home state. But you will have to also meet the requirements of the state you're going to, because the requirements for adoption are different state by state. Things I will be talking about here will be mostly based on Florida. I live in Florida, or the adoption, the birth mother lived in Florida, so that can be a lot easier for us. That's why you might want to go with local. It is a lot easier if you do it within the same state. Don't forget that they are, quote, a non-profit. Remember, this is mainly a tax-exempt status. Doesn't actually mean a company can't make a profit. They are just limited to how much profit they can make. Doesn't limit what they spend their money on. In other words, if it's the last day before the fiscal year and they see they have too much profit, they can choose to give their executives big bonuses, or they go out and buy things, whatever it is. As long as they get their profit below that level that they have to, they're fine. There's nothing that says what they have to spend the money on. Just keep that in mind. I know this from personal experience because I work for a nonprofit who got sued over this, and that was the judgment. The judge flat out said there's nothing that says how they have to spend their money. And I'll say be aware of bundling. What these agencies are going to do, they're going to bundle you into using their hand-picked lawyers, which is usually a law firm that is owned by, guess what, the head of the agency. It's so bad at the national level. They bundled who you could use for a video profile provider because they owned them. So just be aware of all that. Next up, you're going to need a home study once you get an agency. No state can you get away without having a home study. Every single state requires it. What exactly is required could vary state by state, but in general terms, you're going to need background checks. This will be local, state, and federal, both for criminal and child abuse. In my situation, we had moved from Pennsylvania a few years ago. Because we were within a few years, we also had to go get a Pennsylvania child abuse clearance, even though we were living in Florida, just to cover us back for then. It was a few extra bucks, literally. And this is going to be for all adults living in the household, whether or not they are participating in the adoption or not. So if you have parents, grandparents living with you, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, in my case, my son, who's over 18 technically, is legally an adult. He had to go through he had to get background checks done on him as well. So keep this all in mind. That's going to be a little bit extra expensive if you have any of those situations going on. They will be involved in the home study, like it or not. Next, you're also going to need reference letters, stating that you're fit to be a parent, you'd be a good parent for adoption. We needed 5 total letters, 2 of which can be family members. The other 3 have to be like friends or co-workers. They actually do recommend like getting like your boss to be like one of your references if you can. If you're comfortable with that, not just go friends. Take advantage of the family one. But these letters do need to be sealed. You cannot open those letters. They must be sealed, and you have to hand them over to the person doing your home study. You'll never get to read them. They are marked private, essentially, and you can't touch them. If they are unsealed for any reason, they will not be included. You'll have to go get another set that's sealed. You're also going to need a physical exam every year. So that's when your home study renews, is yearly. Saying you are healthy enough to be a parent. There's even things in there where if you've had cancer within the last few years, you're not eligible to be a parent and you can't adopt, believe it or not. This is actually within the laws. And then you're actually going to have the actual home visit. This is where the person doing your home study is actually going to come to visit your home. Like I said, the home study has to be renewed each year. Now, once you take placement or doing finalization, that's going to vary state by state. I know like a state like North Carolina, even though you take in placement, you have to keep that home study up to date until the finalization. In Florida, as soon as you take placement, that's it. You're done with the home study. You don't have to keep it update. Doesn't matter if it expires the next day or on that day. As long as it was valid on the day of placement, you're good. But other states, it could be the day of the finalization has to be up and renewed too. So keep this all in mind. So for the home visit, you're going to need. I have never seen anybody that didn't need a fire extinguisher in the kitchen. This is basic safety things. Working smoke alarms in all the rooms in the house. Again, basic safety. If you have pool or access to water, you're going to need to have the proper precautions. Fences, locks, alarms, things like that need to be in place. Like if a child was to be able to roam and get out. If you have firearms, they have to be secured in a safe period. If you don't like it, you don't get to adopt. Simple as that. You're going to see there's a lot of intervention here. Your pets need to have current rabies, and you must present those medical records showing that they have up-to-date rabies shots. I have dogs and a cat now, so we had to show that all this was done. The person will take like a brief look around, brief tour around your house, just making sure it's okay. It doesn't have to be spick and span. It could just be your basic living day. This is really very brief. They just look, no major things like, knives or something laying around, stuff like that that are very dangerous. Just your basic everyday house will be fine. Don't really worry about this. As long as your house is maintained, normal, you'll be fine. The main focus of the home study, though, is the interview with the prospective parents. They're mostly looking at your background and childhood, particularly like for things of abuse. Be honest with this. Just state that they're looking for any signs that you could abuse a child or anything. And there's also the other big thing is what you're about the adoption, primarily what you're open to as far as risks with adopting a child. The amount of drug exposure, which kind of drugs they're exposed to, how much they're exposed to them, alcohol, all the same, how much usage, smoking, etc. Even prescription drugs, different drugs like that. Everything that you can think of. There's a giant list you have to go through. Moderate use, daily use, once in a while use. You'll have to go through it and you'll have to make that decision on what you're comfortable with. But remember, whatever you put into the home study is not, set in stone. You can decide later on if you're willing to take less risk, you're not willing to take as much risk, or you're willing to take more risk. You just have to amend the home study, which will, of course, cost a few extra dollars when it comes time for placement if you are doing that with a child. And there's also the background medical background, like risks like there. Like the one we didn't have on our home study at all was bipolar. The birth mother was bipolar, so that is considered a risk. We had to amend our home study then to say, yes, we're open to a bipolar background. And there's also the level of contact with the birth mother. I'll go into this: open, semi-open, and closed adoptions. So these are the types of adoption. Open adoption, these have become very popular. This is contact with the birth mother via emails. Usually, you provide updates with the child along with pictures. There might also be visits with the birth mother, where the birth mother actually visits with the child, or you can meet up somewhere so that she can have some kind of visitation once in a while. How often that is depends on what you agree with that birth mother. It could be months, it could be quarters, it could be years between these things. It would vary very much depending on the birth mother and your agreement. And there is a contract you actually sign as part of your paperwork that stipulates all these things. Then there's semi-open. This is probably the most popular one now. Right, open adoption is probably right behind it. Semi-open, you're just generally providing updates on the child along with pictures through the internet. That's how we're doing it. We're in a semi-open adoption. There's usually no visitation, and of course, then there's the infamous closed, which is obvious. There's no contact, no nothing, no updates. These are actually considered rare now. You don't usually see those nowadays. So you get the home study done. You know about all these different stuff. And you got to create your profile now. So first you have a written profile. Written profile is like, just things about the adopted parents, and pictures of you doing things together. Separate pictures of you, things you enjoy doing, just pictures of you, period. Talking about yourself, so that the birth mother can read something and get to know you and whether or not she wants to pick you. You also have other things in there about your family in general, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, other children. Like we have things in there about my son. We had a little bit of stuff about our, my parents and our family situation, things we like to do as a family, things we like to do separately, all that. These are both printed and they will be available on the internet for birth mothers to review. Yes, there's actually a site called Parent Finder where your profile is actually uploaded, where birth mothers can then go through and review potential adoptive parents. Believe it or not, this is a real thing. This is where we come to. And also, the other thing is when you're making these things, you only include first names, general location areas like your city, we live in this area, or we live in this state. You do not go into details to your actual address or your neighborhood. That gets a little too close to the home there. Video profile creation. This is like your written profile, only now you're doing it in video format. So you're going to be videoing some of the rooms of your home, your backyard, or whatever. If you have a yard, you want to really get the room where the nursery is going to be for the baby. You know what that's going to look like. Just things so the birth mother can see you're ready for the child. You might put her at ease. You can also show some of your life and your activities together, how you all interact, things, of course, you like to do, things like that. Might show off the neighborhood, parks, local schools where the child could be end up going. It's up to you. You might even show family events if you have like family reunions or you just do things together as a family. You go places, vacations, stuff like that. Next part is you get to wait and hope to be selected. This is the part where your profile is available and shown to birth mothers after you make the profile. Depending on your agency, you may only need to do the written profile and work on the video adoption. The first agency with, they wanted both of them done before they would even consider showing you to a birth mother. The agency we ended up going with and got the adoption through, we only ever completed the written profile. We never actually completed the video profile. It's up to you if you want to do it or not. And we were able to do it with just a written profile, and we were selected. So, waiting to hope. There is no set timeline for this. You might be waiting a few days and get picked, a few months, or it could be a few years. Because of the way we ended up going, it ended up being roughly a year once we got the written profile done that we got selected. There's no telling when you're going to be selected. It's just, when the right birth mother finds you. And the birth mothers can reject you for any reason. They don't have to give a reason. Even if they give a reason, you may never know why you aren't picked. It doesn't really matter. You're going to find out throughout this entire process that the birth mothers have a lot of power, a lot of say, and you don't. Let's put it that way. So you can't reject a match or selection, though, if a birth mother picks you for any reason, though. The popular one being like you don't like the look of the birth mother. If you say that to the adoption agency, you can be expected to be dropped immediately as a client. But you can reject a match or selection if you're not, comfortable with the terms, the potential costs, if it's like over your budget, or the potential special needs a child might have. You're just not ready to deal with that stuff, or maybe it could come back to the exposure of the drugs and stuff, depending on what has happened. But you can reject because of that reason. You may be contacted for your agent for additional info if a birth mother requests it. We actually had one requesting to know if we were Democrat or Republican. Yeah, that actually was her concern. Even the adoption agency said they never heard that one before, that the political leanings came into play. But for this birth mother, it did. And they asked. The agency also might, if like I said, the bipolar wasn't on our thing, there could be another reason like that. It could be just because the cost is over your budget. They might be asking, "Hey, are you okay if it's even if it's $1 over your budget?" They have to contact you and ask, "Are you okay with this extra money?" It could be $1,000, could be $10,000. You can say no, or you can say yes. Most people will say yes because they just want to adopt and have a child. Next, you've been chosen, so now you get to wait for birth. So what does this process look like? Well, this is going to be my experience, so the good and the bad. First, we were actually matched in February 2023. The birth mother at this time was a couple months pregnant. This was verified by the adoption agency with medical records, so we knew it was real. The birth mother did admit to doing drugs and alcohol before knowing she was pregnant, and she had claimed to stop. She was diagnosed as bipolar, as I've mentioned, and doesn't take her medication. This was the third time she was placing a child for adoption through this agency that we were with. We were told that the due date was mid-August, but she had a history of giving birth a month early, so it could be as early as July. So what else? Get ready to open your wallet, because this is where the fleecing of your money comes in. At first, you have to transfer the estimated cost of the birth mother's expenses into a trust account. You will be paying responsible for the following birth mother expenses over the course of the pregnancy and 6 weeks after the birth of the child. This includes maternity clothes, food, groceries, although this is capped by the adoption agency. Usually they'll give a set amount, and this is all given on a like a Visa card. It's not actual cash. This does have to go through the agency. You never transfer money from yourself to that birth mother. In fact, we never had contact with the birth mother whatsoever during this process. It has to be done in a special way, kept all legal. You also get to pay for her rent. Yep. Her cell phone bill, other utility bills. And they get a small amount of miscellaneous living expenses that they just put on a general card. This is usually like $100, $150 a month, not much at all. And you also get to pay for travel to and from doctor's appointments, and if they don't have insurance, you get to pay the medical bills as well. Yes, you are pretty much responsible for paying for everything as far as this birth mother is concerned. I'll let that sink in, let you think about it as we get to my final thoughts later. So, my experience? Getting the birth mother to go to the doctor's appointments and getting her to supply medical records was very difficult. She never wanted to go, and because she didn't go, we didn't really have a whole lot of medical records. They would come in spurts when we did get them. She never wanted to get an ultrasound. She never got one. We didn't know until birth that it was, in fact, a girl. So that was a nice little surprise for us. We always wanted a girl, and that's why this is nice and pink. An adoption agency will not take any strong stances against the birth mother unless they absolutely have to. The reason being, this is their bread and butter. The birth mother is supplying them, for lack of a better word, the product that they are selling. So you think they're going to be mean to the cash cow? Sorry, it's a very bad way of describing it, but unfortunately, it is the way it is. And the birth mother can pull out of this adoption at any point in time until she signs away her rights. So you could be 8 months in, and she just says, I want to keep the kid. Sorry, you lose all your money. That can actually happen, but generally doesn't. Updates were difficult to get because of her refusing to go to the appointments and get those medical records. And during this time, the birth mother then loses her apartment and has to live in a hotel. Guess who had to pay for that? Now, whether the story was true of how she lost the place to live, we don't know. Let's not get into it. All it matters is that we had to pay for her to live in a hotel for, guess what? I believe it was May through essentially September. June 2023, the birth mother got so drunk she passed out in the hotel lobby. Paramedics are called. She is taken to the hospital. She refuses treatment and is violent towards the staff. Due to this incident, the adoption agency finally threatened to cut off the money if she doesn't go to her doctor's appointment and proves the pregnancy is still viable. Because, and part of this reason why they got immediately alerted, because she did go to the hospital. There is an adoption plan that the agency can get the medical records. They got notified of this incident immediately. There's no more hiding anything. She had to admit that she was indeed drinking alcohol and doing drugs, particularly cocaine at this point. So a lot of things got raised, like they needed to check on, make sure the baby was still healthy. Although they would not do an ultrasound, they just did a basic fetal heart monitor to make sure the baby was still there and alive. That's all she would allow them to do. The agency will not stand up to her. That was the most they would do. But they do have an option of cutting off the money. And then finally, you got to when the child is finally born, or it's when our daughter was born. This is the placement birth phase. The child she did not come as early as expected. A C-section was originally scheduled for August 10th because she had not gone into labor at this point, but they thought it was going to be July, so they just were going to schedule it. Unfortunately, and my daughter decided, she wanted to come August 8th. She went into labor, and the C-section was performed that day, and our daughter was born. The birth mother admitted to drinking alcohol that very day and doing drugs, cocaine, as well. Our daughter was only 5 pounds and 14 ounces when she was born. The birth mother being on the smaller side as well. It's not surprising that our daughter is smaller. It's just was to be expected with genetics. Everyone was aware of the risk of exposure to alcohol and drugs. We were aware of it when we signed up. We were very much aware of it after the June incident. So we were expecting the worst. Honestly, as far as the drugs went, we were really afraid of withdrawal. And we were told because we knew the drugs were there would be a hold of 3 to 5 days of the baby in the hospital, which was standard if drugs were found and signs of withdrawal. They did find cocaine in her system. At this point, though, you are not allowed to even go visit the child in the hospital during this time. Only if it had passed that 3 to 5 day hold could then we visit her in the hospital. So August 9th, there was no signs of withdrawal, though she did test positive for cocaine in her system. August 10th in the afternoon, due to no signs of withdrawal, the hospital suddenly wanted to release her, but wants her to visit a doctor the following day due to the cocaine in her system. We were caught off guard by this since we were expecting at least a 3-day hold, obviously, so we did get caught off guard, but we scrambled. We got an appointment for the next day. We drove the 2 hours. We met in the adoption agency office because that was actually closer than going to the actual hospital. So the social worker assigned to us just took our daughter from the hospital to the office. We met her at the office, and we got to meet our daughter for the first time. We picked up formula along the way as well, but the hospital does give you some, along with some diapers, so you aren't without. Obviously, we weren't sure what kind of formula, because that makes a difference. We want to keep the right brand that she's been used to, just to not upset their stomachs as much. And honestly, we weren't sure originally with diapers what size we were going to need, because a child could be larger, could be smaller. In this case, smaller. So we make sure we had the right size. But they also gave us some of those. They also gave us like an outfit for her. We of course had some clothing already around, so we were ready for her to come home. We just weren't expecting it to be August 10th. We were expecting it to be over that weekend at the earliest. And at this point, a 22-year-long dream had finally come true for us. 22 years we'd been waiting for this, waiting for another child. Very happy. We have a daughter now. I'm very happy. And as you can see, if you've been following my channel, I've kind of dropped off a lot because I'm busy enjoying, just having a daughter and being involved with her. And she's growing up so quickly. She's 6 months old now. Just loves to roll a lot and has learned to make noises with her mouth, so that's her new favorite thing. And watches a lot of Gabby's Dollhouse, to be honest with you. She loves that show. So now you have like the lead up to finalization. At this point, in Florida, this varies very differently state by state. In Florida, the birth mother was able to sign away her rights 48 hours after birth, which is right before we took placement, which is why it happened on that second day when we could actually go pick her up and actually meet her for the first time. At that point, the birth mother had already signed away her rights. We still had to pay for the birth mother expenses for 6 weeks. Due to the drugs in the baby's system, this is considered child abuse. The birth mother was brought up on charges for this. She received 8 days in jail and had to go to rehab. We got to pay for the Uber to go to jail. I am not joking about this. I wish it was a joke. But we get itemized expenses, and it was actually listed as Uber to go to jail. That's what it really is on there. I am not joking, because that was within the 6 weeks we are paying for her to go to jail. The birth brother was unknown. Now this is going to vary by states, but in Florida there's a state website slash database where they post it, where a father, if you even know about this or even cares to know about it, is supposed to go and say, "Yeah, I'm the father. I want to assert my rights." I don't think it ever really happens. It's very rare. So 30 days after birth, the mother's rights are officially terminated, even though she already signed up that it's officially through the judge. 30 days following that, the father's rights are officially terminated. Then there's 60 days after that for any kind of appeal. Should the father show up at this point, want to appeal it, you have to wait 60 days before the adoption can be finalized in Florida. This, of course, varies state by state. What the timeline is going to look like in each state is very different. Florida is actually one of the quicker ones as far as adoption goes, so keep that in mind. I've heard of it being as long as like 6 months before the rights are even terminated. So within a couple of days of placement, you have a post-placement visit. This isn't really anything to worry about. This is mainly see how everybody's adjusting, making sure everything's okay with the baby, making sure you're okay, because obviously you're not going to be getting as much sleep because you're getting up with a baby. We had 3 total. We had a second post placement visit, was actually in the home. We actually came and saw the child, how we all are interacting, just making sure everything's okay. And then the third was, again, it was a video visit, just like the first one, just wrapping it all up before the finalization hearing. These are really nothing. You just quick do them and they're done. Don't worry about them whatsoever. So if you read the agreements you have to sign, the adoption agency can take away the child at any time for any reason. One of the reasons why I kept quiet about my thoughts and feelings on adoption and the adoption agency, anything I could have said could have been construed against them, and they could have just taken away the child. We lose all our money. Too bad. You gotta remember that you have to have paid all your balances owed for different fees, etc., to get the agency's blessing for adoption, because they have to bless it legally to let you adopt the child. Because during this period, you actually aren't legally the parents. The legal entity that owns has custody of the child is the adoption agency. You're just essentially custodians at this point, with the power to make like medical decisions, and you get to pay all the bills. But legally, the child is belongs to the adoption agency, believe it or not. Then once you finally have gone through all this, you get to the finalization hearing. This is where you go in front of a judge to officially adopt your child. You can invite friends or families who want to witness this. My dad and stepmother were joining us as we did this. We were able to do this all via Zoom, so they were all there. The judge was actually quite happy to be doing these, because you got to think about it. This is a family court, dealing with children. They deal with a lot of abuse, having to take children away in very bad circumstances. This is a point, though, where they get to do something good, something happy, not something sad. So the judge was very happy to be doing it. There's a lawyer that represents both the agency and us because of the bundling. Wasn't that big of a deal. I asked myself, my wife, a couple questions, and we affirmed that we wanted her to be her parents, and we wanted her to be our child. And that's when the judge then decrees that she is now our legal child of all the rights, as like our son, for lack of a better example. She is officially like just as she was born to us. She is legally our daughter. We are legally her parents. The entire thing took 5 minutes, to be honest with you. It really was 5 minutes. The hearing was at 3 o'clock. We were done by 3:05. It's very quick. There's not a whole lot to it. There's nobody contesting it. We didn't have any problems like that. So post finalization, then in a few weeks, you'll get a amended birth certificate. It has both the parents' names on it, that you are her, her legal parents, and her name in our case, and it gets sent to you. And with that, you can finally go get a social security card number for the baby and set them up with different things that they might need. Because remember, a social security card number is not automatically issued. You have to actually go apply for it. Most people do this at birth, but I know it's very big in the Amish community not to do this. And when the Amish come of age, they actually have to go and get one if they choose to do that. So, final thoughts and the cost of all this, since I have not talked about that for a very good reason. I want to hold that to the end. So, let's talk about the cost. How much did this all cost? Well, just remember that what I'm about to tell you is a number that is just the cost of all the agency fee, agency costs, birth and other expenses, lawyer fees, legal fee, home study costs, etc. This is just to get the child, essentially. This does not include anything to raise or take care of the child. This does not include diapers, does not include a crib, does not include clothing, does not include formula. That's all extra on top of this. So, the cost just to get our daughter is, or was, I should say now, $73,618.59. Yep, that includes like $25,000 just a basic agency fee. Birth and other expenses came in, I think it was around $32,000 for that. Lawyer fees was a few thousand, legal fees another few thousand, home study costs was a couple thousand. You had these little background checks, $15 here, $10 there, type thing. I think the most expensive one was the fingerprints, was like $51 if I remember correctly, without actually looking at it. But the average adoption is now around 60,000, so we're a little bit higher because of the whole hotel thing. That definitely raised it up. But you can see, if you want to adopt, you better not be poor. And you're going to probably be taking out loans. I had to take out loans. We're paying them off now. There is some things to help offset this cost. There is adoption credit you can get through the taxes. I think it's up to $14,000 now. That's like if you paid in $14,000 extra to the IRS in your taxes, that will be coming back to you. There's some little bit of adoption credits there. Depending on where you work, I had adoption help through my job. They actually gave me $10,000 once the adoption was finalized, so that's helped paying off some of that debt. Plus, we had money saved over the 20-some years that we were able to help keep us out of more debt. We still have a little bit more to pay off. That will be covered mostly by the tax returns. There's also extra tax benefits because she is a child. Now, had she had some more special needs, there's programs also for that. There's different grants and things you can apply for if you don't mind going through that type of thing and the invasiveness of that. And if you can get lucky and get applied and get some grants, you get some more money towards that as well. Every situation is going to be different. So, final thoughts on this. The agencies bundle to enrich themselves, quite honestly. Like I said, they own the other companies, that they own the law agencies. So, of course, they're going to bundle it to enrich themselves to get more money out of them, get into their pockets. So, the agency charges for fees is really on a side of control. This actually might need some government regulation, even though I'm not a big fan of that. They don't seem to be regulating their own industry. They don't seem to do anything. So that's why I really like to see agencies have a bit more accountability to hold the birth mothers for what they agree to. Why does it take an incident where they're actually drunk and passed out for them to actually do anything, to make them do anything, and threaten to cut off the money? Threaten to cut off the money at any point, and that will make people jump up real quick and do what they agreed to. And it's easy to game the system. This is where I was talking about before of why they might choose to do this. Think about what I said about the birth and other expenses. This is months of living expenses, and you don't have to work or do anything. It's very easy to game the system. Just getting pregnant, keep giving up a child for adoption. Why would you ever want to work? You can just keep getting pregnant, keep having somebody else pay your bills, take care of you. I mean, think about it. I mean, this is not hard to think about. And especially if you are poor. I've been poor. and something like this comes up where you can make easy money, and on top of this, if you're an addict, you know the if and the one thing you can always count on an addict for is for them to figure out ways to get their fix because they are addicts. Very creative and very smart, but still addicts, and they will game the system any way, which shape and form. Even it means giving up, getting pregnant, and giving up a child constantly. It's just very easy to game this system. And this, my miscellaneous thoughts. I think it's a little kind of ridiculous what some of the things you have to go through to in order to adopt. I think the physical exam's a little ridiculous. Let's face it, if you're just going to have a child naturally, there's no checks and balances. You don't have to go through background check to have a child. You don't have to have a physical to have a child. You just have a child. Why should somebody who's adopting have to go through extra hoops? Maybe the background checks I could see, but really a physical constantly? I mean, think about that. Kind of ridiculous. I think there could be some more controls about what the birth mother expenses are that would help maybe get that under control a little bit. But I think the other problem on the flip side of the coin is there's a lot more people who want to adopt than there are babies. So letting them game the system might help with that, actually. I don't think there's any easy answers for any of this. Um, these are just things you're going to have to take into account. You know, unfortunately, people who fall into the gaming part, like I said, with our addicts, have fallen for whatever reason to this addiction. They do need help. I do hope the birth mother of our daughter is going through rehab. She said she wanted to. I hope it sticks. But I can tell you, somebody who's dealt with addiction, in order to get to overcome addiction, you have to want to overcome an addiction. Just getting sent by a judge to rehab doesn't mean you want to lose that addiction, and you have to get to the point, get to the issue that caused the addiction. It's not actually not the substance you're abusing or whatever you're addicted to. It's something happened that made you want that turn to this, that made you want to forget about something, escape from something. You have to get down to those issues and get those psychologically solved in order to help overcome your addiction. I mean, there's a physical part to addiction as well, but I just know from my personal experience, those are things that you have to overcome. So, this has been a very long video as I just looked at the time. Thank you for sticking around for this. And until next time, everybody,